So it's Parshas Tazria and Metzorah that deal almost exclusively, besides for the first few psukim in Parshas Tazria, these parshas are all about Negoim. And that's kind of interesting because Lamashal Shabbos is a weekly affair that is relevant to every Yid. Nevertheless, there are only a few psukim in the Torah that mention Shmira Shabbos, Chilul Shabbos, the malachas of Shabbos. B'chlal don't appear in the Torah. What constitutes Chilul Shabbos? It doesn't say in the Torah. Whereas Negoim, which something probably was always rare and affected only some people, nevertheless, there are two almost complete parshas in the Torah about Negoim. And it's even more than that because the Gemara says in Sanhedrin, the Gemara brings a brisa that Bayis HaMenuga loy hoyo v'loy osid liyos. There never was a Bayis HaMenuga, and there never will be a Bayis HaMenuga. V'loma nichtav droish v'kabel schar. Why does it Bechlal say it's for droish v'kabel schar? The Gemara says that this follows the opinion of Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon that says Lo'olam ein habayis tomei ad sheyeroe kishtei grisin al shtei avonim b'shnei ksolim b'keren zovis or koi kishtei grisin v'rachbei kigris. In other words, that the nega has to be a particular size in a particular place, and that's why it's loy hoya v'loy osid liyos. So it's for droish v'kabel schar, in order that we should darshan and we should get schar for the learning. But the Torah is arucha me'eretz mido urechava mini yam. There are enough things in the Torah that are relevant that we can spend our life learning. So why do we need to have a parsha about something that's loy hoya v'loy osid liyos, just for the purpose of droish v'kabel schar? Maybe the reason that the Torah gives us a parsha about something that's irrelevant is to teach us the importance of droish v'kabel schar. In other words, the parshas that are relevant, we need to darshan them in order to know the maaseh asher ya'asun, in order to know the halacha. So the Torah can only teach us the value of droish v'kabel schar by having a parsha which is irrelevant. And from this we learn the importance of droish v'kabel schar, that learning per se is a value in itself. But even if that's true, there must be a reason why the Torah chose to teach us the value of droish v'kabel schar in the context of negoim. We could have had something, a prettier topic that we should learn from the importance of droish v'kabel schar. Why are we learning it? Are we being taught the value of droish v'kabel schar dafke in the parsha of Negoim? You know, actually we spoke about this last year, but I see that last year's Parshas Tazria Metzorah is not recorded. I don't know where it is. So, Mamela, I'm taking the liberty of repeating some of the things. Yeah, if it sounds familiar, don't be surprised. The thing is like this. The Mishnah says in Negoim, Perik Yud Beis, Keitzad Re'iyas Habayis. How does it take place? Uvo asher loy hakoyen v'higid lakoyen leimor ke nega nire li babois. Afilu talmud kochem v'yoidea shehu nega vadai loy yigzor v'yoyma nega nire li babayis elo ke nega nire li babayis. Rashi brings it in Chumash. But why is it that we say that the Baal Habayis, when it comes to the Kohen, should say ke nega nira li babayis, something like a nega, and he shouldn't say that nega nira li babayis? So there are aim in the Chumash. He says v'lo yodati tam bazeh. I don't know why this is. The ma hefresh yesh bein ke nega nearly babayis bein nega nearly babayis. I mean, what difference is it? Why can't he say nega nearly babayis? Bishloime says the re'eimim hoya hadavar toli biyodoy l'taher or l'tamei. If it would be biyodoy of the bal habayis to determine whether it's tamei or not, and it would become tamei with his dibur havamina, I would be able to understand that he should say it in a lashon of suffix. The loy nega hamoira lavadai mipnei yoimer oisei b'lashon vadai kvar nitmo kol mashe bebayis b'terem pinu es abayis, because then all the kalim that were in the house would become tamei before they would have a chance to take them out. Since we know that it's only the kohen that makes it tamei, when he says that it's tamei, gabe b'terem yovay hakohen shekol zman she'ein hakohen nizkak loy ein shom toras tume. So if so, my nafkemina bein sheyoyma oisei b'loshen vadai oy b'loshen suffik. Afila if the balabayis would say it b'loshen vadai, nothing would happen. So why can't he say nega nearly babayis? Says the re'eim avol shamati meira boisai. I heard from my rabbis she'eina kosuv makpid kan bein vadai l'sofik mipnei tumas hanega v'taharosoi. That's not the issue. Elo mipnei derech eretz bilvad. It's an issue of derech eretz. Shelo yoyma odam tuma afila al haborur loy vadai. He shouldn't say nega, even if it's for sure a nega. Elo sofik. V'zeu she'omru chazal lemad l'shoincha loymar eini yoidea. This is what Chazal say in Brachas Daf Daled. Teach your tongue to say Eini Oidea. Don't say things for sure. V'nochaynu. This is what the Re'ein says. L'maisa, this klal of Lamad L'shoincho Loimar Eini Oidea applies to everything a person says. Why are we mentioning it in particular in this context of Negoim? Also, I mean, Lamad L'shoin Chaloime Eini Yoidea is a midas chasidus. It's an anhoga toiva. It's not a din. Whereas over here the Mishnah mentions it as a halacha that he should not say nega, he should say kinega. There's another question, Tosfos in Kiddushin Daf Lamed, where the Gemara brings a brayso v'shinantom sheyiyu divrei Torah mechudodin beficha sheim yishalcho adam al tigamgein v'toyma loy ela emor loy miyad. So Tosfos asks, Tosfos says, v'loy domi lahoda omar mar lemad l'shoincha loy mar eini yoidea shemo tisbade v'teyoches. That don't we say that a person shouldn't say things in a sure way? Because if he does so, he might be misbada. It might turn out that he was wrong. V'teyoches, he'll be caught with saying something untrue. So l'chora, why do we say over here sheyu divrei Torah mechudodim beficha shem yishalcha adam al tigamgein v'toymar loy elo emor loy miyad? So says Tosfos the hainu b'mila d'alma, that's only in mila d'alma that we say that you should be unsure. Whereas in Divrei Torah, you should say things with clarity, unequivocally. So now, over here, we're talking about Divrei Torah. Whether it is a nega or not a nega is a Dvar Torah. So, the klal of Lamad L'shoincha Eini Yoidea shouldn't apply. So it could be that Tosfos continues and says, Va'afilu b'Divrei Torah, Lo yoymar yoidea ani lehispoer boy bekach. Elo mashi yoidea yoyre v'yilami lacher. That even in Divrei Torah, one shouldn't say for sure if it's in order to lehispoer. It's out of gaiva. He should only, we're saying that al tigamgein v'toyma lo ela amor lo miyad in the context of teaching Torah. So Mamela over here, when the Yid is coming to the Kohen, I mean, he's not teaching Torah. So it does apply. it does apply lamad l'shoincha loymar eini yoidea, even though it's divrei Torah. And therefore we say, afil Talmud Chacham uvi yoidea, he shouldn't say nega, he should say kenega. But nevertheless, avada, there has to be a pshat. Why? This klal of lamad l'shoincha loymar eini yoidea, which comes from the derech eretz zuta, is generally just a midah toiva, and over here it's a halacha that you should be eini yoidea, you should say kenega, and you shouldn't say nega. The Gur Aryeh has a different pshat. The Maharal says, "Ein atam shem yoyma nega nira li babayis yeh kol asher babayis tamei." The vaday ein tumah shel bayis rak al pi koyeh. He asks the same question. Aval tama dover doiver shkorim lo yikoin. The kol zman shelo niskach lo yakoyin. Lav nega. It's false to say nega because only the kohen makes it into a nega. At this point, it's not yet a nega, and therefore you have to say kinega. The kol zman shelo niskach lo yakoyin lav nega over eich yoyma nega nirli babayis. So the Korban Aaron, in his commentary on the Torah's Kohanim, says about this, about what the Maharal says, V'loi dok, shehakoyen einoi oiso is a nega, rak tuma oiso boy, v'gam koidim sheyavei hakoyen negahu. In other words, it's not false to say that it's a nega because it is a nega, but it's just that it's not tomei until the kohen makes it tomei, and therefore he argues with the Maharal. The Tosfos Yontiv in the Goyim says, Sheikpido Torah shelo yoyma nega mishum al tiftach pe lasoto. The harei adayin efshe sheyiche. It's possible that before the kohen analyzes the nega, it will become darker, and it will lose its status as a nega, and therefore it's psichas pe lasoton to say nega, and therefore you should say kenega. So whatever the pshat is, why the Torah says that you should say kenega and not nega, we do see that in this context of negoim, we are expected to have a higher level of sensitivity to language and to how we speak. And therefore, even something that in general is just a midah toiva, lamad l'shoin choloim eini yodeya, or al tiftach pe lasoton. Nevertheless, since negoim come for the chete haloshoin, so in this context, we're being told, as part of the process of tikkun, part of the therapy for the Baal Haloshin is that when he presents the nega to the kohen, he should say it in the nusach of kenega and not nega. But nevertheless, l'chore, if the issue is doivei shkorim, that's an issue of loshen. To say sheker is a chait of the loshen. Al tiftach pe lasoton is also an issue of loshen. Achayim v'hamav is biyad haloshen. Somebody's paisech pe lasoton, he could bring on something negative. But lamad l'shoincha loymar eini yodeya is because shemot is bada. It might be that you're wrong. That's why we say lamad l'shoincha loymar eini yodeya. So it's really not a issue of loshen. It's really about thinking. A person shouldn't feel that he's sure about anything because he might not be right. So why is this something that appears in particular in the context of the tikkun for the Baal Haloshen, that he should be lamad l'shoincha loymar eini yodeya, in spite of the fact that lamad l'shoincha loymar eini yodeya is not really about loshen, it's more about thinking than about loshen. But you know that the pasuk says in the end of Parshas Kiseitze, Hishomer b'nega hatzoras lishmor ma'od v'la'asois v'chol asher yoru eschem hakoyanim halavim ka'asher tzivisum tishmeru la'asois. And the next pasuk says, Zochar es asher osa Hashem alekecha leMiriam b'derech b'tzeischem miMitzrayim. So Rashi says in Basal lihizoher shaloi tilke b'tzoras that the hishomer b'nega tzoras has also a pshat, not only the pshat that you should be careful to observe the halachis of nega tzoras, but hishomer b'nega tzoras also means that you should be careful not to get a tzoras. And how? In Basal lihizoher shaloi tilke b'tzoras al tesaper loshen hora zocher he'osui lemiriam. The Ramban holds that it's a mitzvah same in our Torah, Zechiras Maisa Miriam, and that will prevent us from talking Lashon Hara. But the obvious question is that Miriam, what she said about Moshe Rabbeinu, she complained about the fact that he was Perish Me'ishtoi, and that was based on the taina of Harak Ach b'Moshe Diber Hashem Haloi Gam Banu Diber. We're also prophets, and since we're also prophets, and we weren't told to separate from our spouse, so they assumed that he wasn't either. And since they assumed so, they complained about Moshe Rabbeinu being Perish Me'ishtoi, but in truth, as the Rebbeinu Shalom says, Loichein Avdi Moshe B'chol Beisi Nemonhu. Moshe Rabbeinu's madrega of nevuah is mechayev prisha, and the Rebbeinu Shalom told him to be perish me'ishtoi. So Miriam made a mistake. The issur of lashon hara we know is even when it's true. So how could remembering the Ma'aseh Miriam prevent us from talking lashon hara, even in a case that it's true, if the source, the Ma'aseh Miriam, was a mistake? So it must be that every lashon hara is really rooted in a mistake. Meaning, against every lashon hara, there's a taina of loichein avdi Moshe. Because what's the yesod of this lashon hara? Harak ach b'Moshe diber Hashem aloi gam banu diber. The yesod of the lashon hara is that Miriam compared herself to him and assumed that he wasn't told just like she wasn't told. And that is the issue of lashon hara, because I understand, I interpret, I judge somebody else based on myself, based on my life experience, based on my mentality, based on my psychological makeup. And I understand him the way I see myself. And therefore, against every lashon hara, there's a taina of loichein avdi Moshe. In other words, you think harak ach haloi gam banu, but it's not so. Loichein, it could be that he is different than you, and therefore what you're seeing in him is not what you think it is, because he and you are very, very different. Chazal say in Erechin Daf Tezvov that Metzorah is moitzi ra. He brings out the bad. What does that mean? He brings it out. He's moitzi, because the emes is everything has a context. Everything is part of a big picture. But the Baal Lashon Hara focuses on the negative nekuda. And therefore he's moitzi, the ra, from the general arum and arum. He's moitzi the ra from the context. And that's the Lashon Hara. Like the Rabbeinu Yoina says in Shari Tshuva, that the Baal Lashon Hara is mechapes mumei b'nei adam. He looks for the faults. And he says, Hamoshel al zeh, ki hazvuvim, the flies, la'olam bo'u v'nochu al mekoymos halichluch. Flies gravitate to dirt. And so also the Baal Lashon Hara, he gravitates to negativity. He focuses on what's not good. And in other words, so he doesn't see the whole picture because he's focused. He's focused on the ra. And that's why he's moitzi ra. You know, the sugyas of Lashon Hara appear in Masechtas Arochin, because our world is a world of hakol ma'arichin v'ne'arochin. It's all about evaluating. And we don't evaluate according to the true value. The perik in which Hilchas Lashon Hara appear is yesh be'arochin lahakel ulahachmir. Rashi says Hamarich hakor b'Yisrael. Somebody that makes a neder to give the value of even an ugly Jew. Afila einoi shava ela chomesh sloim. Even if he's worth only 5 sloim, noisein chamishim sloim. So the message is that you can't know the value of another person, and therefore don't measure other people by the yardsticks of yourself. So the tikkun of the Metzorah begins with V'huva el hakoyin. What's the shaykhis of the kohen to this process? I mean, the kohen is avodas hamikdash. Why is he koiveya the tumah and the tara of negoy? The pasuk says in the end of Parshas Shoftim, "V'nikshu hakoyanim b'nei Levi." In the parsha of Egla Arufa, the koyanim, the b'nei Levi, they should come to the Mekoy Macholol. Kivam bochar Hashem l'shorsoi ulevorech b'shem Hashem v'al pihem yiyeh kol riv v'chol nega. So the pasuk is saying, why do we bring the koyanim to the Egla Arufa to say Kaper al Amcho Yisrael? Because the koyanim are bom bochar Hashem. For what? L'shorsoi, to serve him, ulevarech b'shem Hashem, and to do berachas koyanim, v'al piem yiyeh kol riv v'chol nega. So we still don't understand. So the b'chira in koyanim is l'shorsoi, ulevarech b'shem Hashem, v'al piem yiyeh kol riv v'chol nega. So what does Egla Arufa have to do with this? Now, when it says kol riv, what does it mean kol riv? That the koyanim are involved in kol riv. So the Sifri learns from here that in the Sanhedrin, you're supposed to have koyanim. Al piem yeh kol riv. The Rambam says in Hilchas Sanhedrin, Perik Beis Halacha Beis, u'mitzvah liyois b'Sanhedrin gdoila koyanim u'levim. Ve'im lo imotzu. This is only a lechatchila. Ve'im lo imotzu afil kulam Yisraelim arei zeh muter. So this is also something that we need to understand. Why would koyanim, who are the people in charge of avodas hamikdash l'shorsoi, how do they come to the Sanhedrin? Why should the koyanim be judges? And the pasuk goes on to say, v'chol nega, v'aistais al piem yeh kol riv v'chol nega. This is all connected with the l'shorsoi u'levarech b'shem Hashem. So you know the koyanim are referred to as ish chasidecho l'levi Yomar in Parshas V'zois HaBrocha. The koyanim are the shorish of midas hachesed. The Zohar says koyanim misitra the chesed osu, and that's l'chora the bam bochar Hashem l'shorsoi, because avoida is, as the Zohar refers to it, as pulchana de rechimusa. It's a service of ava. It's a labor of love. And ava comes from the shorish of chesed. And that's also why Bachar Hashem, levarich b'shem Hashem. Because we say, Ashek Kedushanim Mitzvahs of Tzivanu levarich es Amo Yisrael ba'ahava. As the Zohar says in Parshas Nosai, that the Kohen is supposed to be mevarich es Yisrael be'eino tova. That Birchas Koyanim is with a good eye, and that's the shorish of saying in the Birchas Koyanim ba'ahava. It also says in the Zohar Mefurish, begin kach kohen mevarich es Yisrael v'loi achra. Kohen begin the yisar hai kisra dilei chesed al yedoi de ikri chosed eksiv leish chasidecha v'ho osi misitra de chesed. So that's why he's the mevarich. So we say kivam bachar Hashem l'shorsoi u'levarich b'shem Hashem, because these two things, avas Hashem, which is expressed in the l'shorsoi, and avas abrius, which is expressed in the levarich b'shem Hashem, in having a good eye, eina tova, having ava to the mizbarchim. These two avos are connected to each other. It's all from the shorish of midas hachesed ish chasidecha. As we know, the Gemara in Shabbos, Daf Lamed Aleph, tells us, Maise benochri echad shebo lifnei Shammai omar lo gaireini al menas shetlamdeni kol haTorah kula k'shani oimid al regel achas. Dochvei b'amas habinyan shebeyodoi. Shammai wasn't willing to cooperate with this request, with this demand. Teach me kol haTorah kula al regel achas. However, bo lifnei Hillel gairei omar le the aloch sani lechavroch lo isavid zuhi kol haTorah kula v'idoch pirushu zilgmor. So he tells him that kol haTorah kula al regel achas is ma the aloch sani, what you don't want others to do unto you, lechavroch lo isavid, don't do unto others. So Rashi has two pirushim. How is this kol haTorah kula? Rashi says like this: lechavroch lo isavid, don't do unto your friend. Re'acha ve'reya avicha al taziv. There's a pasuk in Mishlei that refers to the Rebbeinu Shalom as Re'acha. Zeh HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Al tavar al dvarav. Don't be over on the divrei Hashem. Shaharei olecha sanui sheyavar chavercha al dvarecha. Just like you don't want others to be over on what you say, so you shouldn't be over on what HaKadosh Baruch Hu says. So Rashi is learning that Mada Aloch Sani Lechavroch Leisavid is Lechavroch Leisavid means do to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Loshen Acher, Rashi has another pshat that Chavroch Mamish. We're talking about your friend. Going Gzela, Gneve, Niyuf, Veroiva Mitzvahs. And according to what we're saying, these two things are really one and the same, because Avas Hashem, as we see from the L'Shorsoi U'Levorech B'Shem Hashem, that Avas Hashem, which is the Pulchana, the Rechimusa, which is expressed in the L'Shorsoi, and Avas Abrius, which is expressed in the Levorech B'Shem Hashem, are really one thing. As the Maharal says in the Sivay Soilom, in the Nesiv Avas Areya, Ki Dover Zeh Sho'oyev Abrius, who Avas Hashem Yisborach Gamke. That in itself is Avas Hashem Yisborach. Ki misha oyev es echod. Somebody that loves somebody. Oyev kol maaseh yodav asher osa ufal. Lefichach kasher oyev es Hashem Yisborach I efshe shelo yehav es bruav. V'musoyne habrius. Somebody that hates people. I efshe sheyehav Hashem Yisborach asher baron. It's impossible that he should love the Rebbeinu Shalom. V'chein kvoid chaveroi. The Shloah HaKadosh in the Shara Oisia says, "V'ahavta l'reacha kamoicha hu hagoyrein v'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha." That one comes to v'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha through v'ahavta l'reacha kamoicha. V'ahavta l'reacha kamoicha hu hagoyrein of v'ahavta Hashem Elokecha. So al piem yeh kol riv v'chol nega. The presence of the Kohen, the Ish Chasidecha, the Baal Eino Tova in the Sanhedrin could impact the Baalei Horiv that are having it in Torah. And the Vahuva El HaKohen is mashpia on the Baal HaNega, the Baal HaNega that is always gravitating to the Mokum HaPogum and being exposed to the Kohen who has the Eino Tova will change his outlook. As the Chinuch says already in Mitzvah Kuf Samach Tes, V'yesh lo lovay el hakoyen shehu ha'oimeid l'kaporas hachoitim v'im chevras ha'mechaper ulai yaharer b'tshuva. So it's only the Kohen who has an Eino Tova. He's the one that judges whether or not the nega is tomei, because that's part of the therapy we're offering for the Baal HaNega, the Baal Lashon Hara, that he should understand that he should see things with an Eino Tova and not decide prematurely what he's seeing. Over here, there's one Hezger and another Hezger until there's a Hachlota. And since the Shoirish of the Issa Lashon Hara is in how to judge and how to evaluate others, therefore the exposure to the Kohen, the Balei Tova, is part of the process of the healing of the Baloshen Hara. So that's also why, in spite of the fact that in general, Lamad L'Shoincha Eini Loimar Eini Yoidea is just an Hoget Tova. Over here, it's a din that he should say Eini Yoidea, and even if he's a Talmud Chochem the Yoidea, he should say Kenega, because that teaches the Baloshen Hara not to decide prematurely, and not to be so sure of what you're seeing. I mean, you see a nega, it's not so pashut. It might not be a nega. So the Lamad L'Shon Cholei Me'eni Yodeya, in spite of the fact that it's not an issue of loshen, but it's an issue of thinking, is shaykh to the sugya of loshen hara, because the sugya of loshen hara is also not about just speech. The sugya of loshen hara is about thinking, about how to evaluate people, how to see others. As the pasuk says, "Mi ha'ish echofetz chaim oyhev yomim lirois tov Metzorah l'shoin chomeira," which means that if you want to live a life that's worth living, and that's by being a roya tov, because if somebody is always a roya ra, so his life is not a life, because he's living in a miserable world. So if you want to be a oyhev yomim lirois tov, your chofetz chaim. So since a odom nifal lefipu loisav, a person is impressed by his expressions, a person is impacted by what he does, a person's personality is shaped by his activities. So the eighth is, first of all, Metzorah l'shoincha meira usfasecha midaber meira. If you stop talking negative, you might stop seeing negative. In other words, because there's a relationship between speech and thought that goes both ways. I mean, a person says what he thinks, and he thinks what he says, and therefore, if you'll stop, and the way it's avada, the first step is to control your speech. You control your speech, it will affect how you see things and how you think about things. The Gemara says in Brachos Daf Nun Hey, Hayman de Choze Chelme v'lo yoda mai Choze. Somebody had a dream, and he's not sure what the meaning of the dream is, and he's worried. So leikum kame kahani beidne de parsi yadayu v'lei mahochi. He should, at the time of Birchas Kahanim, he should say, Chaloim cholamti, everybody shalom ani shalach v'chalai moise shalach, Chaloim cholamti ve'eni yoidei amau. And he is mispalel that kishem shofachta kilo lasbila marosha miklolo levroche, kein hafoich kol Chaloim moise olai letoiva. And he's Messiah Bahadei Kahani the Oni Tzibura Ome. So it's not Mizbar in the Gemara. What's the shaykhis of Hatovas Chaloim to Birches Koyanim? The Meiri says V'imra Chaloim ve'eino yoreid l'soif in yono im toiv ve'imra v'nafshoy nevoicha olav yichaven es hasho shahatzibur mechavnim bo beyosim v'hu b'shas ha'tfilah. The kol shekain, b'shosha koyanim noisim kapeim v'oinin hatzibur achreim omen b'kavana yisera. So according to the Meiri, there really isn't a special shaykhis of hatovas chaloim to Birchas Koyanim. It's just that it's a zman that during the tefillah that the tzibur is mechaven b'yoyse. That's the Meiri. But in the Rabbeinu Nisim Goyen it says, mefarish taime de milse b'midrash yilamdeinu, the Parshas Nosai, Hine mitosoi shel shloimo shishim giborim, elu shishim oisi oisi bebrichas kohen. Kulom achuzei cherev, shekol echad ve'echad shmoi shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu nizkar boy, ishchar boy al yereichoi, ma roaso yorech nizkeres kan, afil roi odom bechaloimoi, cherev shlufa, unesuna b'tzavoroi, v'koitei as yereichoi, mashkim leboike, v'hoil lebeis hakneses mipachat shero ba'leilois b'chaloimoy v'royas hakoyanim noisim eskapeim v'chaloim haram is battle mimenu v'kach neman mipachat ba'leilos. So from this it's mavur that there really is a shaykhis of atovas chaloim to Birchas Koyanim, which is the shishim giborim, which is the Birchas Koyanim. but maybe we could explain it on our level, that Chazal say, Ein marim loy lo'odom elo mirhure liboy bayoim. A person dreams mirhure liboy bayoim. And Chazal also say that kol hachaloimos holchim achar hapeh, that the peh actually makes the dream mean what the peh says. Kol hachaloimos holchim achar hapeh. In other words, here we have an example where the peh is not expressing a reality, but it's actually creating a reality. So the chaloimus that actually express their huri alev are tolui in the pisroin, just like the thoughts that one thinks by day are also tolui in a pisroin. In other words, the chaloimus express their hurim, but their hurim, just like the chaloimus, are really something that has to have a pisroin. And therefore, when somebody is mekayim, lamad l'shon chaloim loima eni yodeya, so he looks at his dreams also, and he says, chaloim chalamti, ve'eni yodeya ma'u. And therefore, leikum kami kahani, be'idna the parsi kapayu, and the mavorech esamu yisrael ba'ahava, those kohanim that have the eina tova, and they are the ones that decide whether a nega is tamei or not tamei. And so also the dreams will follow the peh of the kohanim. Al piem yeh kol riv v'kol nega. So it's levarech b'shmoi, v'al piem yeh kol riv v'kol nega. So the Baal HaNegoim comes to the kohen, and so also the Baal HaChaloimos comes to the kohen, because it's with the Eina Tova that you can interpret reality, but not only interpret reality, but actually create a different reality. Just like the kohen makes the nega be tamei or not be tamei, the pisroin can actually make your thoughts have a different meaning. So that's also the refuah of Metzorah al Yidei Moshe Rabbeinu, because the pasuk says, "V'lo yochlu lishtos mayim mimora ki morim hein." So what's ki morim hein? Pashup Pshat is that the water was morim, but there's a medrash that says ki morim umisloininim hein, that they were bitter. They couldn't drink the water because they were bitter, as Rabbi Shua ibn Shu'ib says in his droshes. Dorshu Chazal ki morim hein choyzer li Yisrael ki mishe machzik bepiv davar mar kalano kol hadvarim hamesukim sheyosim bepiv yivmu loy morim. So you see, this is also an issue of hoylech achar hapeh. I mean, hoylech achar hapeh, we have it in terms of the impression that our verbal expressions create, and we also have it in the Metzorah, where the peh that was morim hein was gorim, that what they drank felt, al derech hatzachus. We can also add that we're talking over here about Hai man de choze chelme v'lo yoda mai choze. Somebody had a dream and he's not sure about his dream, and he says, "Chaloim cholamti ve'eni yodeya ma'u." Okay, so he says, "Bein shecholamti al atzmi, bein shecholamti al acherim." That we understand, but he says also, "Bein shecholmu acherim olai." Cholmu acherim olai is not my dream. So how could I be mative the chaloim that somebody else dreamt about me? And we started off by saying, "Chaloim cholamti ve'eni yodeya mahu," and then we also include the dreams that other people dreamt about me. So we could say that really, how do you know somebody dreamt about you? That's also your dream. In other words, you're dreaming that he's dreaming. So Mamela, it's also part of the Chaloim Cholamti. So it's all about the Erhure Liboy Bayoim that brings me to dream that he's dreaming. Anyway, listen, the point is that Lashon Hara, the Gemara says, is a lishnet liso'o that kills three people. It kills the person that says it, the person that's being spoken about, and the person that listens to it. L'chayre, I mean, it kills the person that you're talking about. That l'chara means because by talking about him negatively, you bring down you bring him down in the eyes of people. You could and he suffers from the lashon hara that you spoke about him. Whereas the fact that it kills the speaker and the listener is an oynish. So l'chara, it's not similar. B'chlal, we call it lishnet lisor the kotel class. It would be mashma that all three are in the same boat. So according to this, the pshat is like this: that when I talk negatively about someone, so people look at him negatively, and eventually he himself looks at himself negatively. His expectations that he has of himself go down. His self-dignity is lost because people look at themselves more often than not the way others see them. And Mamela, that's how I kill him. But that also kills me and it kills the listener because, I'm also a member of the human race and the listener also. So if you talk negatively about people, I mean, you come to the feeling of kol adam kaizev. I mean, this is what the human race is like. So Mamela, it brings you all down. It doesn't end up being just talk about him. It becomes talk about yourself and it becomes talk about the listener. In any case, I want to wish you all a good Shabbat.